A very good morning and a warm welcome to each one of you present here today. I am happy to invite you all for this 8th day session of 2-week international FDP on technology insights on IoT, artificial intelligence, and data science. The schedule of today's workshop will focus on the topic multi-agent system. I would also extend my warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Dr. S. Usha Kritika. She is the Assistant Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Shiv Nada University, Chennai. She has over 10 years of teaching and research experience in reputed institutions. She has published many papers in various journals and conferences. She is a co-investigator in a collaborative project with University of Malaya. Her areas of interest are automated negotiation, machine learning, and computing. We are happy to have you with us today, ma'am. Now, I request Usha Kritika ma'am to take over the session. The session is yours, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Revati ma'am. I'll now share my PPT. Wait a second. Okay, I hope you all see my PPT. Can you see it?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, so the topic today is going to be multi-agent systems. I'm sure you've all been attending a lot of workshops. Most of the time, it's all about machine learning. It's about deep learning and stuff like that. You learn about a lot of algorithms. But today we are going to see a topic which comes under core AI. So it's kind of a deviation from the regular machine learning that you've been doing. And this is also one of the topics which has a good potential to connect IoT systems with artificial intelligence. And also, as you can see towards the end of my presentation, this has a very huge potential to be the future of AI. But there is very less research going on in this topic. Whenever we say a project on AI, it almost means that, almost always it means that it's about, say, a project related to computer vision, something like object recognition or face recognition or something like that, or it could be NLP related projects, or it could be speech recognition related projects. Now, this is a slight deviation from that. Usually there you will be using most of the supervised and unsupervised learning approaches, but multi-agent systems is an area in which the predominant paradigm of machine learning that we will be using is reinforcement learning. So I will today aim to give you an overview of what multi-agent systems are all about, and I will also give you a background on what are all the techniques that you must know if you have to embark into this area in terms of research, or if you just want to study also, where you have to start. That I will be giving, and I will also give you some research directions in this area. Okay, so let us go into the presentation. So the main question about the holy grail of artificial intelligence, we can say, is how do we solve intelligence, right? So one of the ways in which we can go about is we can take inspiration from natural intelligence. And that's exactly what we've been doing so far, almost. Deep learning or neural networks, they are based on actual brain neural networks, right? So yes, we've been taking inspiration from there, but today we're going to see how intelligence itself actually evolved. See, when you're able to design a system which is able to recognize objects, can we call that real intelligence? It's just able to perceive the world, right? So how do we bring about that intelligence which is above the level of general perception? For that, we're going to take inspiration from how human evolution happened. Okay, evolution of the brain. How did Homo sapiens, us humans, evolve larger brains? How did that happen? And how did we evolve better intelligence compared to all the other organisms in this planet? And in general, why are the brains of primates, primates means apes and humans also, why are these brains larger than other animals? So if you have to look at how we evolved, now there are several hypotheses, but usually what happens is they say that brains evolved to process factual information. About the world. Like you want to survive. Like take a situation in which some hominid is there, Homo erectus or something like that, which lives in a forest. Now it has to look around the world. It needs eyes to see the world. It needs the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, and all that, right? So in order to process all that, brains evolved. That's the general perception. And most of the attention has been focused on this only. Like, how do we recognize patterns? How did we evolve color vision? And how about speech perception? How did we evolve language? Things like that. But then in 1998, this guy Dunbar, he proposed a model which is called the social brain hypothesis. Now, this is a hypothesis; it's not a theory, so it's not been proven. Social brain hypothesis is actually a set of hypotheses. Now, the thing that the hypothesis which says that you have to process factual information about the world in order to evolve a brain, that's called as instrumental hypothesis. Look at this SES, that's a plural, meaning that there are multiple sub-hypotheses which all come under the group of instrumental hypothesis, which all mean that you evolved your brain to look around you to perceive your environment. But there is a problem with that. Brain is a very expensive organ in your body. It takes around 2% of your body weight and it consumes 20% of your energy. So imagining a world in which food is scarce, how can you afford to waste 20% of your energy only on one organ? That's not possible. And how did we evolve brain? Like, other organisms also had this need to perceive their environment. They did not evolve larger brains. So there is another hypothesis which was given. That group of hypotheses, we call it a social hypothesis. Under that only we have the social brain hypothesis, which says that human intelligence has evolved in order to adapt to complex interpersonal relations. So as you can see, primates, they are all social animals. They form very close-knit groups. They have cooperation within their groups. They have competition between two different groups. And we call something called as a Machiavellian intelligence hypothesis, meaning that Machiavellian means using deception, using stealing things from another group. And you have this fights and all, very strict competition between two different groups. You try how to deceive the other group in order to gain for yourself. You feel jealous about it, you feel angry, all those things, right? Those emotions were there. So when there are multiple organisms of your own species who are there for competition and some of them for cooperation, that is when you develop these complex relations, and that is the reason why brain was evolved. So that is this thesis. So now, why am I telling all this? We are just taking inspiration from natural intelligence. So natural intelligence evolved because of social interactions. Then why can't we evolve artificial intelligence also that way? And that brings us to the topic of multi-agent systems. So you can think of an agent as a sort of a computer program, the sort of agents that you see in Matrix. Okay, so these software programs, there will be multiple software programs like this, intelligent ones, and there will be a time when they have to interact with one another, right? In our real world, we live in a multi-agent world, right? For example, if you take traffic, there are multiple cars there, multiple vehicles, which are all sharing the same resource of road. We are all sharing the same road. If you take society, we have to interact with each other. World economy, everything develops because of our interactions. Take workplace, for example. Workplace, again, you have to form teams, you have to interact with people. Now, naturally, in our world, all of these systems, traffic, economy, workspace, sports, family, everywhere, it's a multi-agent world. We form the unit of family using, in which there are multiple people available. Each of them can be considered as agents who interact with each other, right? So our natural world is like that. So in future, it's possible that even the artificial intelligence world will be like that. If you take the example of smart grid. Now, in smart grid, we call each of the participants as prosumer. prosumer means producer as well as a consumer. So everyone will be producing energy and they will also be consuming energy. So dynamically, you have to distribute the energy throughout the system, and dynamically the pricing has to happen. So dynamically you will be negotiating the pricing and all that will happen. It's a very dynamic system, and it's a multi-agent system. Many of the entities are involved in the same grid, so it is a multi-agent system. And autonomous vehicles, that is another example of a multi-agent system. In the future, imagine that all the cars are autonomous cars only, fully autonomous cars. Then you probably don't even require the need for traffic signals. They can interact with each other, they can cooperate and try to figure out a way in which they can navigate the roads without colliding. Colliding is the only reward that they will get. Okay, without collision they have to go. That is the only goal. Otherwise, they have to navigate. Or in a world in which there are multiple robots, robots have to interact with each other. And sometimes you have swarms forming using agent systems. For example, swarms of vehicles, even autonomous vehicles can form swarms, or drones can form swarms. So whenever you talk about this kind of a system, there is immense coordination that is required between each of these systems. Okay, and negotiation, even in computer networks, they, like, if each of the node is intelligent, it can try to figure out the way to efficiently transfer data from one node to another without collision and in a more faster way. So what are these multi-agent systems? Basically, you have an environment everywhere, wherever you have an environment in which you have multiple agents. For some reason, they may have to interact with each other, and each of these agents will be having its own goals, its own actions. It will take its own actions, and it will possess some domain knowledge about the environment. It will have sensors and actuators to interact with that environment. So if a system is like this, you can call that as a multi-agent system. Now, the two main things that we are going to see is cooperation and competition. Two important interactions that will happen within multi-agent systems: cooperation and competition. Now, cooperation is all about how you can solve problems in a distributed manner together. So you can multiple agents can join together and cooperate with each other to solve a bigger problem that can happen. For example, you have this picture is taken from RoboCup. RoboCup is a competition which happens every year. Many universities participate. So every university, they will be designing a team of robots which will compete with another team of robots in a soccer match. So whoever wins will be given the cup and everything like that. Now, in that situation, all the agents, all the robots in this case, have to interact with each other, and they have to try to win the match. Okay, that's what they're working towards. And in this case, in RoboCup case, all the members of the team will be aiming to get a goal. But sometimes, in some situations, the agents will be self-interested, meaning that they don't really want to work together. But if you want them to work together, they must be rewarded for something. So that can also happen. For example, if there are a set of drones, they really don't have to interact with each other, but if they have to, you can reward them. Like that, they can work together. So these are some of the settings in which cooperation happens in multi-agent system. Then competition. Competition, mostly it comes in the form of games. One of the very famous examples of a system which actually won over a human being was AlphaGo. You must have heard about it in 2015. AlphaGo won over the world champion in Go. Go is a game in which Lee Sedol is the champion, is the current human world champion. But in 2015, AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol in a match. Now, that's superhuman performance, right? The best human can do only this much, but above that, AlphaGo is performing. Now, all that happened because of deep reinforcement learning. Now, in that, they trained the system with human data. They used human data, and they also gave it some domain knowledge about the game. and also gave them the rules. So based on those rules, AlphaGo employed something called as self-play. Self-play means suppose you have two instances of AlphaGo, they will play with each other. Now, when they play with each other, they are rewarded for the right moves and they are negatively rewarded for the wrong moves. So when that happens, when they keep playing millions and millions of matches, they tend to learn new moves. So based on that, they can win. So compared to a human, what AlphaGo learned was so creative and so innovative that it was able to win even over a human champion. So they did not stop here. This AlphaGo was developed by DeepMind. Now, after that, they developed another system which is called as AlphaGo Zero. Zero means zero, they name it as zero because they did not give any human data at all. See, here they gave human data to AlphaGo system, but in AlphaGo Zero, they did not give any human data. It was just AlphaGo Zero learning all by itself, but they gave the rules. Okay, like that it happened. And then Alpha Zero came, which was a common algorithm which can play Go, chess, and shogi. Shogi is a Japanese form of chess. So all those games can be played. And here again, you specified the rules. Then more recently, Mu Zero came. So look at this Mu Zero, there is no rules that is given to the agent, which is given to the system, right? So it learns everything all by itself. So it's just like you write one algorithm. Now you can make that algorithm to play almost anything that you want. It can play Go, it can play chess, shogi, and even Atari games. Pac-Man is an example of an Atari game. You probably must have played Atari games when you were younger. We have Space Invaders, Ping Pong, things like that. There are so many Atari games available. So all those Atari games, this Mu Zero system was able to master. So it's just one algorithm which was able to kind of evolve and finally able to solve so many games together. So this was all possible because of competition. And I bring it here because we have two agents which are doing the self-play, right? It's a multi-agent system. Now all this is possible only because of that. So I'll give you another example of how intelligence evolved because of agent interaction. Now, this is a game that was developed by OpenAI. OpenAI, it's a non-profit organization which is doing a lot of work in artificial intelligence. So the main aim for them is to develop artificial general intelligence. We'll talk about it later in this PPT. But towards that goal, they're working. And this is one of the games that they developed in order to try to see how intelligence can be evolved in multi-agent systems. Okay, so what happens here is we have this environment. This is the environment in which there are multiple agents. Okay, so there are two teams of agents. One is the set of seekers, which are given in red here, and a set of hiders. So they are playing the game of hide and seek in this environment. This is called environment. Now, the work of seekers, the goal is to find hiders, and the hiders, they have to hide from the seekers. That is the only goal. So they used deep reinforcement learning here, and the only reward that they gave for these agents was to successfully complete their task, like successfully hide for the hiders and successfully seek for the seekers. So that was the task that was given. And in that environment, there were also some tools that were available. There were boxes, there were ramps and all that. So these agents were never taught to use how to use boxes or ramps. But then they were allowed to play games millions and millions of times they were playing. So initially, it's like they will try to run, they will try to hide, the seekers will try to find the hiders, like that. So this is simply run and chase. This was the initial thing. Then later on, after multiple trainings, see what happens. They learned how to use these boxes to block doors. Now that's an interesting evolution, and we can see this as some kind of intelligence getting evolved here. So they are like using the boxes to block the doors, and they are locking them. So once one team locks a block, the other team will not be able to move it. That's the condition. So the hiders are locking those boxes, and the seekers, they will of course try to open here and come, but no, they cannot move it. So after some time, then later on, what happens? Even multiple door blocking happens. See, they can coordinate with each other, and they can close even multiple doors. And after that, the seekers, they try to find a way out of this. So what do? They use the ramp over here. They use the ramp, which they move here, and they are trying to find the hiders using the ramp. Then again, after multiple millions and millions of times of training them, the hiders, they finally figure out that you have to bring the ramp inside and then lock the doors. When that happens, the seekers won't be able to find you. Right? So just look at this, how they are evolving so many different strategies to hide from each other and to seek. So they even learn to how to construct shelters like this, so that the seekers can't find them. And they also finally learn box surfing, which is like the seeker will be able to get on top of a box and they will run. So when you run, you can actually move the box and finally get to the hider. Now, this behavior was not at all expected even by the developers of this game. So it's all these agents which they themselves figured out what should be done, and they themselves did everything. So as you can see, this multi-agent system, it has got such a huge potential in which we can actually evolve intelligence. So what are the techniques that will be used in the background for multi-agent systems? Like if you want to start doing research in this area, or if you want to learn something about it, the basic mathematics related to this that you need to learn is game theory and reinforcement learning. So I'll give you a very basic introduction of game theory, and I will also give you another very basic introduction of reinforcement learning. We'll see that. So what is game theory? Now, game theory, it is a mathematical theory that studies interactions among self-interested agents, like how different agents can interact with each other in a game or even otherwise. Like the initial theory was developed for games, but later on, any interaction can be modeled using game theory. The pioneers of game theory are these two people, John von Neumann and Oscar Morgenstern. These were the ones who proposed game theory. And if you can recall, John von Neumann is also a pioneer in computer science. So that's sort of a coincidence. Now, coming to game theory, there are several types of games that we will be discussing about. One is cooperative versus non-cooperative games. Like if two agents interact, will they be cooperative, or will they be non-cooperative? Will they like follow all the rules, or will they not follow? Based on that, you can this is a type of game, like some sort of a classification of games. And there are perfect information games, and there are imperfect information games. Perfect information means the whole of the environment is known to all the agents. For example, if you take chess, now for both the players, where each coin is located is known to both the players. So that is perfect information game. Sometimes imperfect information game will also be there. For example, rock, paper, scissors. You don't know what the other player is going to give you. So that's imperfect information. Symmetric versus asymmetric. Symmetric means both the players have the same set of rules. Asymmetric means it may be different. For example, hide and seek. It is an asymmetric game because hiders have a different set of rules. They have a different set of goals, while seekers have a different set of goals. So that is symmetric and asymmetric games. Then you have zero-sum and non-zero-sum games. Zero-sum means there will be only one winner. There will be one winner and one loser. Non-zero-sum means you cannot make that classification. It's like there can be win-win situation, or someone can partially win and the other person can partially lose. Like that also it can happen. Then simultaneous versus sequential game. Simultaneous means at the same time all the players will be making their moves. Sequential means they will take turns. So these are all different types of games. Now every game is like designed as a payoff matrix. So these are some of the main concepts in game theory. I'll be explaining them. This is how you model a game. See, for example, you have this game of rock, paper, scissors. Everyone has played that. So how do you model this rock, paper, scissors in game theory? What do? You draw a matrix and the columns will be taken by one player. The rows will be taken by one player. So the rows represent player 1's choices. The columns represent player 2's choices. Player 2's choices and payoffs are given in red, and player 1's choices and payoffs are given in black here. Okay, now inside we are writing some numbers, right? We are filling the matrix with some numbers. These are called payoffs. Payoffs means what is the reward that each player will get. So if you take like player 1 chooses rock and player 2 also chooses rock, both of them give rock, then nobody will be winning, right? So it will be 0, 0. That is player 1's payoff will be 0 and player 2's payoff will also be 0. Now if player 1 gives rock and player 2 gives paper, what happens? Rock will paper will cover rock. So rock will get -1 and paper will be rewarded with 1 point. Similarly, you can fill up this matrix. Okay, payoff of the first player and payoff of the second player, you have to fill. The columns and rows will be constructed with the options that each agent will be having. There are 2 agents here, that is why we can form a matrix. Even if there are multiple agents, then you can form a matrix, but a multi-dimensional one. For simplicity, let's consider only a 2-player game. And they have 3 choices, so it's a 3 x 3 matrix. You have to fill all the payoffs, and this is how you get how you construct a payoff matrix. Now this is the first step. In any game, you first have to construct the payoff matrix. Then in order to do a sort of analysis of this game, there is something called as Nash equilibrium. We need to find Nash equilibrium, which is sort of a solution for this game. And we also have something called as Pareto optimality. I have definitions in the coming slides. But each player will be following a strategy. In repeated rock, paper, scissors game, let's say that 2 people are playing rock, paper, scissors and they are playing it again and again. When that happens, each of those players may follow a strategy. Like one player's strategy could be, I will always give only paper. Okay, that is a strategy. When that happens for multiple number of times, then the other player will be able to figure out, okay, this person is always giving paper, so if I am using scissor, I can always win, right? So if you follow that kind of a strategy, it's called as a pure strategy. If you follow just one, if you take only one option all the time, then it's pure strategy. And usually people go with another type of strategy, which is called as mixed strategy. So it's like you will be selecting each of your option with a given probability. Let's say you pick rock with probability 0.3, so or paper with 0.4, like that, something like that. You will be picking each of these options with a given probability. That's a mixed strategy. Or it can also be random. Randomly you pick rock, paper, or scissor. That can also be there. That's also an example of a mixed strategy. So using these strategies, the players will be playing the game. Now, with a payoff matrix, you have to find out what is the optimal solution for this game. So for that, we have 2 concepts. One is called as Nash equilibrium and the other one is Pareto optimality. So Nash equilibrium, how will you find it? Now, this is all mathematical and everything. I'll just tell you how to find Nash equilibrium. Let's say that player 1 chooses rock. Okay. Now, you have to look at this row. In this row, player 1 will be able to get payoffs of 0 or -1 or +1. These are the 3 possibilities. Now, depending on what player 2 chooses, both of them will be getting their appropriate payoffs. So, if player 1 chooses rock and player 2 chooses paper, then player 1 will be getting a payoff of -1 and player 2 will be getting a payoff of +1. Okay, now in Nash equilibrium, what you have to do means, given the choice of one player, you have to see which is the choice which gives maximum advantage for the second player. So if the first player chooses rock, then you have to see which of these options gives the maximum payoff for the second player. So the second player can get a payoff of 0 over here if they choose rock. If they choose paper, they will get 1. If they choose scissor, they will get -1. So this is the best choice for player 2, right? Of course, this is not a sequential game. They will be playing simultaneously, but this is how you analyze to find the Nash equilibrium. Now, rock versus paper. Over here, this is a Nash equilibrium. Now, there will be multiple Nash equilibrium in the same game. So, in this game, -1, 1, 1, -1, all of these are Nash equilibrium, except for 0, 0, except for these things. Okay, so given the strategy of one player, what is the best strategy that other player can do such that if there is a deviation, they will not be able to get a better payoff? That's what Nash equilibrium says. And another solution approach for game theory for a payoff matrix is Pareto optimality. Pareto optimality means, for this game again, suppose you take this again, take this cell here in this matrix 0, 0. Now, if you move from here to here, you can improve the payoff of the second player from 0 to +1. But you cannot improve the payoff of the first player from 0 to -1. That cannot happen. Like, it's going down. So if you're like able to improve one player's payoff without affecting the second player, then you say that that particular cell is in Pareto optimal state. Okay, so in this example here, all of these are Pareto optimal states only, because rock paper scissors is a zero-sum game. Zero-sum game, recall that zero-sum game is when one player can win and the other player will definitely lose. It's a kind of binary game. You can either win or lose. In a zero-sum game, all approaches, all the cells here, all payoffs are Pareto optimal only. Now I'll give you another example of a game. This is called chicken game. Now, these are all games which are standard games which are standardly studied whenever you study game theory. So, chicken game is another benchmark game. Here, what happens is two cars are coming. Okay, they have a common road here. Both the cars cannot go in the same road because the road is very narrow. So, one of them have to swerve. Swerve means they have to take a deviation. They have to take a detour. One of them have to take a detour. Now remember, these two cars are driven by drivers who have big egos. So they will always try to drive straight. Let the other one take a detour. That's what both of them will think. Now, if both of them swerve, like if both of them take the detour, then they will both gain nothing, lose nothing. So it's 0-0. But if one player goes straight and the other player takes a detour, let's say this player, he goes over here and the red car comes straight. So when that happens, the red car will get a payoff of +1 and the yellow car will get a payoff of -1. So like I said, taking a detour is something that will hurt the ego of the driver. So they will get a payoff of -1. And this happens this way also. The other way around also it happens. Now if both of them go straight, then obviously that will lead to collision. So that is a condition that both of them don't want to happen. So they are getting a payoff of -1000, a very large negative payoff if both of them go straight. Okay, so this is the game. This is the payoff matrix. Now, if you have to find the Nash equilibrium and the Pareto optimal solution to this game, Nash equilibrium will be like, take any one player and one option. Suppose if player 1 chooses swerve, then the better payoff that player 2 can get is going straight, because if the player 2 also chooses swerve, then he will get only 0. If he goes straight, he will get +1. So this is a Nash equilibrium, and this is also a Nash equilibrium if you like take player 2's choice first and player 1's choice next. This is a Nash equilibrium. And Pareto optimal solution, these three are Pareto optimal solutions. -1000 is not a Pareto optimal solution because from -1000 you can improve to -1 because always -1 is better than -1000. So you can improve this way, or you can improve this way also. From -1000 you can improve to +1 here. In both the way you can see improvement. So this is not a Pareto optimal solution. Except for this, all of the other choices are Pareto optimal solutions. Now this is another famous game in game theory, which is very widely studied, which is also very applicable in real-time scenarios. It's called prisoner's dilemma. Prisoner's dilemma means, let's say there are two prisoners and they are put in separate cells separately. The police have figured out that both of them have committed some crime together. Now they are put in separate cells and they are inquired. So if one prisoner stays silent and the other prisoner also stays silent, if they both cooperate, they will get only 1 year in prison. But if both of them betray each other, they will get 2 years in prison. If one stays silent and the other betrays, then the person who stays silent will serve 3 years and the person who betrays goes free. So if you look at the choices for each prisoner, just imagine that you're a prisoner, you're on one side of the prison, you're being asked whether you did it or not. If you stay silent, if you choose to stay silent, you will think about the other prisoner, right? If he also stays silent, then I will get only 1 year. But what if he betrays? I will get 3 years. So what do? I'll better betray. So your best choice will be to betray. Go here. And similarly, it applies to the other prisoner also. They will also by default choose betray. And in a non-cooperative setting, always this will be the Nash equilibrium. This is the Nash equilibrium for this game. Both will serve 2 years. But if you think about it, if both of them are cooperating, they will get only 1 year. This is the best solution, like the best solution. Right? Yeah, so that's the dilemma here. This looks like the best solution, but if you are like finding out the equilibrium, then this is the equilibrium. So that's the dilemma over here. Now in repeated prisoners dilemma game, the best strategy is tit for tat strategy, which is like if that person betrays one time, I will also betray the next time, like that. So there are multiple solutions for that also. Now we are studying about all these games because we are studying about interactions between different agents. And game theory was one of the main mathematical models which was used to model a patrolling problem in Los Angeles Airport. In Los Angeles Airport, they have a system in place which is in place since 2007. It's based on game theory only. It's based on a game called Bayesian-Stackelberg game. So what they did was the two players are one side they have police and the other side they have criminals or terrorists, you can say. So in an airport, there are multiple entry points. Now in each of those entry points, they have patrolling duty. But like at any point in time, all the checkpoints cannot be covered. Only a few random checks will be done here and there. So where to properly place a checkpoint is decided by this algorithm called ARMOR, which is based on this Bayesian-Stackelberg game. So you can sort of devise a payoff matrix, just like how we did for the previous games. You have to devise a matrix in which player 1 will be police and player 2 will be terrorist or criminal, whoever it is. And based on that, they use something called as a Dobbs algorithm in order to solve this game. And basically, this comes out with a schedule in which checkpoints you have to place the police and the canine patrol animals, everything. They decide based on suggestions given by ARMOR system. So this was published as a paper. Here you can refer to that paper if you're interested. Like this can be applied to other security systems also. So another important concept that you need to study is reinforcement learning. You probably might have heard about it a lot of times. So reinforcement learning is a paradigm in machine learning in which there is an agent, and the agent works based on rewards. So the agent will take an action on the environment, and based on action or based on the reward that he's getting, he may change to different states. Like every agent will be in a specific state at each point in time. Based on the actions he take, whatever is more rewarding, those actions he will take again and again. So that's the overall idea of reinforcement learning. These are some of the important concepts that are related to reinforcement learning. Now, for example, let's take a robot which is employed in recycling duty. So it has to collect multiple objects and it has to put that into a dustbin or recycle bin. So this robot has three choices. One is it can search for objects, or it can wait for some time, simply take rest, or it can recharge. So those are the three options. Now, based on that, what we generally do in reinforcement learning is, given a problem like this, we design a Markov decision process. This is MDP, Markov decision process. So we assume that there are two states for this agent. One is high state, meaning that the battery is high, above a certain threshold, and low state. Low means below a certain threshold, battery level. High and low. Those are the two states that this robot will be in. Now, in high state, it can take search option or it can wait. And it won't recharge because when you're when the battery is high, there is no need for recharging. So two actions can be taken when the robot is in high state. It can either search. It searches with probability 0.7, and the reward it gets for searching is 4. So that's how MDP works. You have to put the probability and the reward together. Similarly, when it is in high state, if it is waiting, the probability that it returns to the same state is 1, and the reward that it gets for waiting is 1. So that's why we put, all the time, whenever the battery is high, if it waits, there is no wastage of battery. So always it will return to the same state, and the reward is just 1. Like that we design. See, when the battery is low, if it goes for a search operation, it will return with low battery only for it gets a reward for searching. 4 is the reward that it gets. Similarly, when it is in low battery, it goes for if it has to move to high state, like if it has to recharge, then that is something that we don't want to happen. Like the robot should be very conservative. It should conserve battery. So when it goes for recharge, it gets a negative reward, -3. So like that, we define an MDP process like this. You put the states first and then operations. You put the probabilities and the rewards, everything. Now, your whole point in reinforcement learning is to solve this MDP. For solving, you use dynamic programming approach, and we use Bellman equations also. So you have to solve those Bellman equations in order to optimize the rewards. Like you have to maximize the rewards in this case. So that is what reinforcement learning is all about. Now, what are the challenges in reinforcement learning? Sample efficiency is one challenge. Now look at this game over here. Just by looking at it, see, this is you and this is princess. You have to save the princess. That's the objective of this game. Now, most of us, just by looking at the game, we know that we have to move this person over here. You have to climb the ladder, then move here, again climb the ladder, and avoid this monster, get to the princess. Just by looking at it, within 1 minute, people can easily train themselves to play this game. But that is not the case with algorithms. Even if they employ reinforcement learning, there is no sample efficiency at all. You have to play the game millions and millions of times. The agent has to train millions and millions of times in order to properly train itself, like how to solve the problem. Okay, but another problem here is it does not know where to move. So if it by chance moves here and finally gets to the princess, that is when it gets the reward. If it moves here, it gets a negative reward. That's the feedback that it is getting from the system. But otherwise, there is no reward for climbing the ladder. There is no reward for jumping over here. there is no reward for avoiding this fire. So if an agent takes a set of actions, you don't know which are the good actions, which are the bad actions, what you have to do in order to reach your goal, and what and all you have to avoid in order to reach the goal. So that is called as a credit assignment problem. Which actions should be credited more and which actions should not be credited? So that is again a problem with reinforcement learning. Now, in order to solve that problem, what you can do is you can give rewards for climbing the ladder. You can give rewards for jumping over here. All that we can do. But the problem is that will become overfitting. You will be almost hand coding the agent to go and reach the goal. So it will probably not work if you're giving another challenge. So that's another problem with reinforcement learning. Explainability, which is a problem even in deep learning approaches, is again a problem here. Can you say that the agent will do the same thing again and again? Can you expect, are your results repeatable? That is another problem with reinforcement learning. But all of these things are there, but still there is a paper which came out recently in 2021. This paper was written by father of reinforcement learning, Richard Sutton, and David Silver. David Silver is a lead researcher in DeepMind. He was the lead in developing of AlphaGo system, Alpha Zero system, everything. So actually, he has a course in reinforcement learning. You can see that in YouTube. There are 10 lectures, each with about 1.5 hours. If you just see that all the 10 lectures, you will be really good in reinforcement learning. They are so good. You can, if you are interested, you can watch his lectures. So they've written a paper. In that paper, they are saying that they are putting forth a hypothesis that reward is enough to achieve intelligence, to achieve knowledge, learning, perception, social intelligence, language, generalization, imitation, everything. For all this, rewards are enough, meaning that reinforcement learning approach is enough to achieve all this. Of course, you may need a bit of supervised learning and unsupervised learning also, but mostly reinforcement learning is enough to achieve this. And they also claim that reinforcement learning is enough to develop artificial general intelligence. Artificial general intelligence means like human-like intelligence. Whatever you want, you can do it. So what do I mean by that? I can say it in one picture. Well, this is not Rajnikant. This is Chitty, the robot, which you've probably all seen in the movie. So this is an example of artificial general intelligence, almost human-like, right? He can do a whole range of tasks. Of course, he needs computer vision. Of course, he will use this eyes-like camera in order to perceive the world. He needs a microphone to listen to what others are saying, and everything, like all that is required. Senses are definitely required. But over and above that, he needs something called as artificial general intelligence, which differentiates us humans from other organisms. So what are all the different tasks he can do? He can cook, he can fight, he can dance, he can drive a car. Now, this is probably this will probably not be required. Like if you're going to design such a robot in future, then autonomous vehicles, cars will be very prevalent. So at that time, you will probably not require a robot to drive your car. This may not be required, but anyway, Chitty can do that. He can even act like a doctor. He can do surgeries, and he can even fall in love. Well, that's one robot, really. Now, I like this movie because another thing came about. This is a multi-agent system. Look at this. If you've not seen this movie, these are all individual robots which together form one big humanoid form. And just imagine, if you want to make this humanoid form walk, how will these robots coordinate with each other in order to make this walk or do any action? If you want to raise this hand, each robot here should exactly know how you have to react. Now, we've been seeing people doing march past and things like that. They all have to move in coordination with each other, right? And that requires a lot of training. So just imagine what amount of training these robots must have gone through in order to, achieve this sort of a multi-agent system, which can act as a whole, as one single entity, and which can do very complex actions. In this case, fighting, running, things like that. Okay, so we are very, very, very far from achieving this sort of an intelligence. But according to what these people claim, reinforcement learning alone is enough to develop such a intelligence. Okay, so now I'll just give you some start over, like where you have to start from if you are interested in doing reinforcement learning, where you have to start from. Now there are simulators available, which is given by OpenAI, which is called as GYM. Now all you have to do is import the GYM library, something as simple as pip install GYM into Python, and you can use it. They have some startup tutorials also. You can follow those tutorials. So in GYM environment, things will look like this. This is an example of a multi-grid environment. So this is an agent. You have to program this agent so that it goes, takes this key, open the door, and goes and reaches the goal. So that's a difficult task, right? You can actually try your hand writing algorithms to solve this task. Now there are multiple environments like this. This is another example of GYM environment in which you have an Atari game. You have to, shoot bullets in order to catch hold of all of these objects here. Now, apart from that, you have highway environment, and many such environments are available. Okay, so you can just try out this GYM. You can also train robots to walk. That's another environment which is available in OpenAI. Lots of them are available. You can explore that. Another group of simulators, like another simulator is Malma. Malma is mainly promoted by Microsoft. Now, usually papers, whatever they write, they use GYM environment, OpenAI GYM environment. But Microsoft people, they always use Malma because it's based on Minecraft. This is a screenshot from Malma environment. So in Minecraft, you have agents, right? So these agents are programmed, and you have to make them complete some tasks. So this is more like a 3D environment. This is more like a 2D environment. 3D models are also here in GYM. So you can sort of explore these two simulators and try to, whichever interests you, you can try your handwriting reinforcement learning algorithms. And maybe, who knows, if you're able to figure out a new method of solving a problem, you can even get a paper out of it. So this is one good place to start. Or if you're interested in autonomous vehicles, you can use RSIM or Carla. These two are this is RSIM. RSIM has simulations for autonomous vehicles, both cars and drones. Carla has simulations for autonomous cars. So you can write algorithms for these cars to navigate around the environment, around the simulation. Okay, you can try your hand with that also. This is also open source. RSIM and Carla both are open source. Now, what are some research directions in this area? You can work on agent cooperation, multi-agent communication. How will you make communication? This communication is a level above your network communication. It's not like sending packets and all, how you physically communicate, not that. This is more like intelligent communication. How will you communicate with one person to convey your message? That kind of communication. Then team formation, how each agent will trust each other in order to work together, and how will they manage their reputation. Negotiation and bargaining. Negotiation is another very huge research area under multi-agent system. Then you have agent societies, organizations, institutions, organization, everything relates to how you can model the environment around these agents. Then equilibrium computation, how you find Nash equilibrium. Now, Nash equilibrium is a concept that was put forth by Nash, John Nash. He gave only the concept. There is no proper algorithm in order to actually find out how to find the Nash equilibrium in a given setting. It's proven that there will always be a Nash equilibrium, even in a multiplayer game, but there is no proper algorithm to actually find Nash equilibrium. So if you're interested, you can explore that. And yes, multi-agent learning is there, multi-agent teaching, how you will coordinate multi-agent coordination, human AI coordination, that is another main area, including zero shot. Zero shot means without prior communication. Just like that, you communicate with each other and you get things going. Just imagine, suppose there are autonomous vehicles around, you have an intersection. Now, without traffic signal, you communicate with each other and try to navigate without colliding. If that happens, that is multi-agent coordination, and that's zero shot coordination, because you don't know which vehicles are going to come at that point in time in that intersection, right? So you have to figure that out yourself. You have to communicate zero shot and you have to get it going. Then there is theory of mind. All of these areas, peer modeling, social cognition, everything relates to theory of mind. Theory of mind means it's like opponent modeling, how you can deduce what your opponent is thinking based on their actions. Suppose another agent is doing something, how do you find out what they're actually doing, what is going on in their mind? That kind of thing is theory of mind. Peer modeling means what are your peers thinking, what actions they will probably take, so that you can react to it. Those are all, so these are all different research directions in this area. So if you're like starting out your research, then you can definitely look into these areas. In whichever you're interested, you can collect papers related to that, and you can start proceeding. Maybe you can use one of the simulators to start with and proceed with your research. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You have
Thank
any
you so
questions?
much for this wonderful, informative session. We learned a lot about this, ma'am. And participants, the chat box is open for your doubts. Participants, you can ask your doubts through chat box.
Any tool is there to learn without coding for beginners? Yeah, for beginners, you can start it out with simulators. There is not much coding involved actually. A lot of coding is already there, which is written and it is given in the tutorials also. You just have to look at OpenAI website and also the Malmo website. If you look at them, there are tutorials along with code. So all you have to do is just copy paste that code, see how to run it. Once you run it, and once you start seeing the results, then you will know what you have to do. Like, you will get more interested, and then when you start studying, you just have to tweak that code a little bit. So it's not like you should know perfect coding in order to get started with. What simulators we can use for mind theory? Even the simulators that I have mentioned can be used. It's called theory of mind. Theory of mind means, suppose you're using car simulator. Another car is coming opposite to you in your same lane. What you should do? Are they going to stop or not? Based on visual cues and based on what actions they are taking. Maybe they are flashing an indicator or they're doing something. Based on that, how do you decide whether you have to brake or you have to change your lane? So that is theory of mind. We humans normally do it intuitively. When you drive, you know what the other person is going to do. Of course, there are defaulters in road, but in general, humans are very good at it. So how do you incorporate that to autonomous vehicles or any other agent-based system? That's theory of mind. So there are no specific simulators for that, but you can like incorporate that into any of these simulations that I've mentioned. OpenAI, okay, I'll see if I can give a link to OpenAI. Now, this is I've put that in the chat box. And there are also several GitHub links in which you have these environments which are available, which you can clone from GitHub and you can use it. See what is there. I'm not able to get the link, but you can just Google OpenAI GitHub, you will be able to get the links. Okay, so there are no more questions, then shall we wind up?
Thank you, ma'am, for making everything clear. And participants, please fill the feedback link from the chat box. I would like to end this session with a vote of thanks. We are really thankful to have Dr. Usha Kritika with us today. We learned a lot about multi-agent systems. Thank you so much for enlightening us and taking us through this topic, ma'am. I would also like to thank our participants for making use of the wonderful session. Thank you so much all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am.